Ku Okaphor was the epitome of success in Lagos. With a net worth that soared well into the millions, courtesy of his booming tech startup, he wore his ambition like a well-tailored suit. His every gesture exuded confidence, perhaps too much of it. He stood before a large floor-to-ceiling mirror one Friday evening, checking his reflection. His hair, carefully trimmed, framed a face that many found undeniably appealing. "You've done it again, Kalu," he said to his reflection, smoothing down the lapel of his jacket. His voice was tinged with self-satisfaction. Another successful contract signed. Another reason the world should know you're the best. From the outside, Kalu's life seemed flawless. He posted pictures of luxury cars on social media, alongside philanthropic gestures like donating laptops to rural schools. Comments and likes flooded his timeline. People admired him, even envied him. Yet behind the scenes, Kalu's narcissism was as wide as the Lagos Lagoon. He knew exactly how to manipulate situations, and especially how to exploit the weaknesses of the women who fell for his polished persona. His strategy was simple: charm them, shower them with gifts, and once they were emotionally hooked, leave them feeling inadequate when he moved on. He viewed relationships as stepping stones, or practice rounds, as he once joked to a close friend. On that particular evening, he was heading to a social gathering with some of his business partners. As he left his high-end apartment, he took one last glance at the African art pieces he'd collected, then locked the door. The hush of wealth embraced him everywhere he turned. Even the elevator ride down felt like a stage to showcase his success. Despite the veneer, a deep sense of emptiness trailed him. He tried to fill it with power and control, especially in matters of the heart. Little did he know, the consequences of his actions were closing in, bit by bit. For now, he basked in an illusion of perfection that would soon come crashing down. As he stepped out into the warm Lagos night, Kalu had no idea just how drastically his life would change when his carefully crafted image began to unravel. Ebra Okachukwu, a soft-spoken schoolteacher, had been part of Kalu's life for 8 long years. She never wore expensive clothes, but her simple dresses always felt right for her calm and graceful spirit. What truly set her apart was her unwavering belief that Kalu was destined to be her husband. And why wouldn't she believe that? For years, he'd sprinkled sweet talk about their future, dangling the promise of an elaborate wedding. He proposed in subtle ways, but never with a ring, she once confided to her best friend, Chinyere. He always spoke about our future like it was carved in stone. Ebra loved Kalu wholeheartedly. She spent countless late nights grading papers, saving up money, not for herself, but to occasionally surprise him with thoughtful gifts. Each time he talked about a new business venture, she'd encourage him, sometimes even giving him her entire monthly salary to invest in his dreams. One evening, Ebra sat on the sofa of her modest living room. Her eyes were glued to her phone as she scrolled through Kalu's latest social media updates. Her heart swelled with pride when she saw him signing lucrative contracts and shaking hands with important foreign investors. The caption read, "Together, we shape the future of African tech. #blessed #visionary. Chinyere, who was visiting, gave a slight frown. "You're too trusting," she warned gently. "He hardly picks your calls these days. You keep pouring yourself into him, but what do you actually get in return?" Ebra sighed, placing the phone down on a nearby table. "He has his flaws," she said, "but I've seen him at his best, too. People at that level are busy. Maybe I'm just overthinking." In truth, Ebra felt uneasy. She could sense a growing distance with every passing month. Late-night phone calls diminished to curt midday texts. Warm invites turned into impersonal plans that Kalu cancelled last minute. Her once close bond with him now felt like it was hanging by a thread. But Ebra still believed in his potential. She convinced herself that Kalu was just a diamond in the rough, someone who would eventually settle down after he'd climbed the ladder of success. She remained loyal, despite the nagging voice in her mind that told her to reconsider. Little did she know, her devotion would soon collide with Kalu's unstoppable ambition in a way neither of them could predict. Rumors began circulating among Kalu's inner circle. At an exclusive wine-tasting event, as tinkling glasses and hushed conversations wafted through the air, Kalu announced that he needed to find a God-fearing, pure woman. He mentioned nothing about Ebra, who was conspicuously absent. "She's not quite on my level," Kalu confided in a longtime friend, Jide, swirling the dark red liquid in his glass. "I've evolved. I need a wife who fits the new image." Jide raised an eyebrow. "But I thought Ebra's been with you through everything, man. Doesn't she deserve at least a conversation?" Kalu shrugged. "That's old news, Jide. People change." What Kalu didn't know was that Ebra had quietly walked in, hoping to surprise him after receiving a last-minute invite from a mutual friend. She froze when she overheard his words. Her heart pounded so violently that she worried those nearby would hear it. She stepped back into the shadows, letting Kalu's revelation sink in. "A pure and God-fearing woman," she repeated in her head, with tears burning at the corners of her eyes. That night, Kalu walked out of the event, ignoring Ebra's texts. He never once looked at the phone that buzzed incessantly in his pocket. The next morning, Ebra awoke to discover that Kalu had entirely stopped responding. Days became weeks, with no explanation. She oscillated between heartbreak and disbelief, replaying his dismissive statements in her head. In a feeble attempt to reach him, Ebra dialed his number one last time. The mechanical voice on the other end intoned, "The number you're trying to reach is not available." That same morning, a friend sent her a screenshot of Kalu's social media post, "New chapter, new beginnings. Time for me to find my real path." Ebra crumpled to the floor, phone slipping from her hand. She realized that she'd been cut out of his life as though she never existed. The betrayal was swift, brutal, and unapologetic, just like Kalu's ambition. After cutting Ebra off, Kalu embarked on a dramatic transformation, as if shedding an old skin that no longer served him. He announced on social media that he had rededicated his life to God, posting pictures of himself at a new, fast-growing church in Victoria Island. His captions read like scriptures, each post peppered with moral lessons and references to turning over a new leaf. The rebrand was highly strategic. His business needed a face of humility, and he leveraged religion to soften his image. Soon, the church itself spotlighted him for his large donations. The charismatic pastor, known for televised sermons, invited Kalu to speak during a youth seminar. He stood at the pulpit, microphone in hand. "I was lost in material things," he proclaimed, his voice smooth and measured. "But God pulled me from the edge. I realized success without spirituality is empty." In the front row, Sister Agnes and other church members nodded eagerly. Many believed his testimony, enthralled by his story of redemption. A handful, however, eyed him with quiet skepticism, but they were drowned out by the applause that followed. Meanwhile, Ebra saw his rebranding videos online. She felt a stab of bitterness and confusion. Was this the same man who used me for so many years, now preaching about moral rebirth? She shut off her phone mid-video, tears of betrayal threatening to fall again. Kalu reveled in this new facade. He organized outreach programs, bought Bibles for the youth fellowship, and sponsored choir retreats. On the surface, it looked like an authentic revival, but deep down, he was more interested in the power he wielded through religious influence. If shaping Africa's tech future made him wealthy, shaping hearts through the church gave him an entirely new level of control. Little did he realize that this reinvention was laying the groundwork for a new chapter in his life, one that would unravel mysteries far greater than any sermon he could give. Her name was Zara, a reserved worship leader whose gentle demeanor and hauntingly beautiful voice made her the darling of the congregation. Zara was known for her near-angelic presence. On Sundays, she'd stand at the front of the church, eyes closed, hands lifted, singing praises that sent shivers through the crowd. Her sincerity felt as genuine as morning dew. Kalu noticed her the first time he attended a live rehearsal. Zara stood at the microphone, conducting the choir. Even dressed in simple attire, just a modest blouse and a long skirt, she glowed with an inner light. As she sang, Kalu felt a strange tingling, an inexplicable pull toward her. "I think I'm falling for someone in the choir," he confided to his business partner, Chima, with a half-smile one day over coffee. "She's pure. She's godly. She's different." Chima raised an eyebrow. "So this is about sincerity or about conquering another challenge?" Kalu scoffed, swirling his coffee. "Why not both? She's exactly the type of woman I need to solidify my new path. If I marry a worship leader, people will take my redemption seriously. Investors, too, might see me as a more wholesome individual." And so Zara became his focus. While she was praying for a spiritually aligned partner, she had no inkling that Kalu was dissecting her from afar, plotting every approach. He studied her routines. She arrived at church at 6 a.m. on Sundays to prepare for worship. She led Bible study on Wednesday nights. After each service, she politely chatted with members, then disappeared into the quiet corners of the church. To Zara, Kalu seemed like just another enthusiastic convert. She welcomed him with the same warmth she showed everyone. When he first introduced himself, "I'm Kalu, new to the faith, but ready to serve," she had no reason to doubt his sincerity. His eyes sparkled with what she mistook for genuine faith, but in reality, it was the exhilaration of a predator who'd found an ideal target. In the weeks that followed, Kalu spared no effort to capture Zara's attention. He fasted alongside her during a church-wide spiritual retreat, posting pictures of his Bible verses online for everyone to see. He donated a brand new sound system to the choir, a gesture the entire congregation applauded. "You're doing a lot," Zara commented gently one Wednesday. They stood outside the church building, a cool evening breeze ruffling her neatly tied headscarf. "Anything for the kingdom," Kalu replied with a reassuring smile, hands clasped behind his back. He took every opportunity to speak at youth events about his powerful transformation. He even volunteered to handle the church's multimedia, citing his tech background. Zara, who often had to organize worship sets, found his enthusiasm refreshing. She'd learned to be cautious. After all, not everyone in church was there for genuine reasons, but Kalu's financial contributions and unwavering presence made it hard for her to suspect an ulterior motive. Conversations between them started to grow more personal. After choir practice one evening, Zara was collecting sheet music when Kalu approached. "How do you stay so committed?" he asked, leaning against the pew. "Leading worship, volunteering. Where do you find the strength?" She smiled, her eyes reflecting a gentle warmth. "I pray a lot, and I remind myself that it's not about me. It's about serving God and the community." Kalu nodded, feigning deep thought. "I wish I had your humility," he said softly. "But I'm learning." In truth, he was learning, but not what Zara thought. Each moment with her allowed him to fine-tune his tactics. A compliment here, a heartfelt prayer there. His longing for her grew not out of love, but from the burning desire to claim someone so seemingly uncorrupted. Little did he know, certain forces, both seen and unseen, would soon collide, making his carefully laid plans unravel in the most unexpected way. While Kalu was busy wooing Zara, Ebra's life had spiraled downward. For days, she wandered her small apartment in a fog of despair, unable to sleep or eat properly. The sense of betrayal gnawed at her. Even though Kalu had never formally proposed, their years together felt like a silent engagement. She'd invested her money, time, and heart into his life, only to be left with nothing. One afternoon, her friend Chinyur found her hunched over the kitchen counter, tears streaming down her face onto papers scattered in front of her. "Ebra, you have to eat," Chinyur urged, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Starving yourself won't solve anything." "I don't understand," Ebra whispered, her voice cracking. "How could he just vanish? I gave him everything. Where did I go wrong?" Chinyur offered her a cup of tea. "You did nothing wrong. He's the one who changed." Yet the final blow came when Ebra saw the engagement photos. A mutual acquaintance had leaked images of Kalu slipping a diamond ring onto Zara's finger. The pictures were elegantly done, complete with Kalu's new Christian persona on full display. Ebra's phone vibrated incessantly with messages. Have you seen this? Is Kalu engaged to someone else? The heartbreak exploded across her social media. She posted a cryptic status, "When you realize love was never real," prompting waves of sympathetic comments. People speculated, but Ebra offered no further explanation. That evening, she sat in her bedroom, replaying voice notes Kalu had once sent her, promising forever, whispering sweet nothings. "How could I have been so blind?" she muttered. The agony swelled inside her until it burst into inconsolable sobs. Unbeknownst to her, the upcoming confrontation would be even more agonizing, ripping open wounds that were barely beginning to heal. Ebra summoned the last of her courage to confront Kalu at his office. After waiting nearly 2 hours in his lavish reception area, where large television screens displayed the latest achievements of his tech empire, she was finally escorted in. He sat at a broad mahogany desk, checking emails as if she were an unwelcome interruption. She stood there, fighting the tremble in her legs. "Kalu, why? Why did you cut me off like that after 8 years?" He hardly looked up from his screen. "Ebra, let's not make a scene. Things change. We change. It's that simple." Tears welled in her eyes. "But we talked about marriage, about building a home together." He silenced her with a dismissive hand. "Ebra, I realized you're not wife material for me. I need someone more virtuous, more aligned with my vision." Wife material? She felt a hot sting of humiliation and anger in her gut. "I stood by you when nobody believed in you. I invested my money, my love, everything, into you. How can you say I'm not wife material?" He finally looked up, his gaze cold. "I'm grateful for whatever you did in the past, but that was just practice. I'm ready for the real thing now. Let's not drag this out." Ebra stared at him, her heart pounding as if it might burst. She could barely breathe, let alone speak. In that moment, she realized the man she loved had been nothing more than an illusion. With tears in her eyes, she turned and left the office, leaving behind the final shards of her faith in Kalu's decency. Walking out of the building, she gasped for air. She fought back sobs, determined not to give anyone the satisfaction of witnessing her pain. Her mind raced. What do I do now? The answer would come in a way she never saw coming, leading her down a path of both despair and revelation. Kalu and Zara's wedding became the talk of the town. The event was held in an extravagant hall decorated with towering floral arrangements and sparkling chandeliers. Everything about it screamed luxury, from Zara's hand-stitched gown imported from Europe to the 4-course gourmet meal served to every guest. When the bridal march began, Zara floated down the aisle like an ethereal being. Her eyes sparkled with tears of joy, and she wore a smile that captured the hearts of everyone watching. The wedding ceremony was peppered with prayers, scripture readings, and a heartfelt sermon on love and faithfulness. Kalu stood at the altar, beaming with pride. "I've done it," he thought, glancing over the sea of well-wishers. Congregation members, business associates, and curious onlookers all gathered to witness what seemed like a flawless union. As the officiating pastor pronounced them husband and wife, applause thundered through the hall. Cameras flashed, capturing each fleeting moment, Zara's shy smile, Kalu's victorious grin, and the tears of both genuine and feigned happiness from those in attendance. But later that evening, in the solitude of their lavish hotel suite, something felt off. Kalu could sense Zara's tense energy. Amid the bright lights and glossy glamour, there was an undercurrent of unspoken anticipation. Is she nervous, or is it just me? He wondered. They shared their first meal as husband and wife in a quiet corner of the suite. Kalu toasted with a glass of champagne. Zara, however, sipped water, her gaze trailing toward the large window overlooking the city. He reached for her hand. "You okay, darling?" She hesitated before nodding. "Yes, just a lot on my mind." He tried to reassure her, attributing her mood to wedding day exhaustion. Unaware that this would be the night setting them on a collision course with secrets neither of them could fully comprehend. That first night as husband and wife, Kalu expected typical newlywed intimacy. But Zara seemed preoccupied, her eyes distant and thoughtful. Fatigue, he reasoned. Once they drifted off to sleep in the plush king-sized bed, silence enveloped the room like a heavy curtain. Then, in the dim glow of moonlight, Kalu stirred. A strange sensation compelled him to open his eyes. He found Zara lying on her back, staring straight at the ceiling, her eyes wide open. "Zara," he murmured, his pulse quickening. "Why are you awake?" She did not respond. Her gaze was fixed, almost trance-like. Concerned, Kalu leaned forward and gently touched her shoulder. Suddenly, she blinked, turned her head, and looked at him as though awakening from a dream. "Kalu," she whispered, her voice soft but alert. His heart pounded. "Are you okay?" Zara's expression softened, and she smiled in a reassuring way. "I'm fine. Sometimes I find it hard to sleep. It's an old habit." He tried to probe further. "Is there something bothering you?" "You looked, I don't know, zoned out." She brushed off his concerns with a light laugh. "I promise, I'm all right. It's just a little quirk of mine." Kalu lay back down, staring at the ceiling. For a moment, he felt a nagging sense that something was amiss. Zara's eyes wide open in the darkness had jolted him in a way he couldn't explain. But minutes later, exhaustion crept back in, and he drifted off, leaving his unease to fester silently. If only he knew that Zara's midnight stare was more than just an odd sleeping habit. It was a subtle hint at hidden depths, a glimpse at the secret corners of her soul that would soon collide with his darkest betrayals. For a few weeks, married life moved forward somewhat uneventfully. Yet Kalu's old habits refused to die. The lure of fleeting affairs beckoned like forbidden fruit. He found himself flirting with a business associate's assistant one evening at a corporate dinner. After exchanging a few playful texts, they arranged to meet at a plush hotel. The moment felt charged as he checked into the room, anticipating a familiar rush. But just as he attempted to be intimate with this other woman, an inexplicable force seized him. He felt his muscles stiffen, and his vision blurred. Then, he collapsed onto the floor, his entire body limp as though drained of all energy. Panic ensued. The woman, terrified, fled the room, leaving Kalu sprawled on the carpet gasping for air. After several agonizing minutes, feeling slowly returned to his limbs. Drenched in sweat, he grabbed his phone to call an ambulance, but halfway through dialing, the sensation vanished entirely, like it had never happened. Back home, Zara watched him warily as he staggered through the front door, obviously shaken. "Kalu, you look terrible," she said, concern etched on her features. "Did something happen at your meeting?" He cleared his throat, his mind racing for a plausible explanation. "Just, not feeling well. Maybe a little food poisoning." Zara frowned, reaching out to feel his forehead. He flinched away, forcing a quick smile. "I'm okay, honestly." He made a show of heading to the shower, water scalding his skin as he tried to wash away the horrifying memory. It had to be a medical anomaly, he decided. Some fluke, maybe stress. But the next time he tried to cheat, this time with a past acquaintance, the same uncontrollable collapse occurred. Confusion gave way to alarm. Something was very wrong, and it had nothing to do with food poisoning. He could feel the walls closing in, but he couldn't yet guess that the root of his sudden affliction lay buried in a tangled web of his past sins. Kalu's desperation mounted as the collapses continued, always triggered by attempts at infidelity. Faced with an inexplicable condition that doctors brushed off as stress-related blackouts, he sought help elsewhere. He turned to prophets and spiritual healers, traveling to remote towns where people claimed divine powers. At a small church on the outskirts of Ibadan, a self-proclaimed prophet named Isaiah offered to pray over him. Kalu knelt before the makeshift altar, the evening air thick with incense. Prophet Isaiah laid hands on him, chanting and speaking in tongues. "I see darkness in your wake," the prophet intoned, eyes rolling back. "You have invited curses upon yourself. Kalu felt a jolt of fear. How? I tithe, I pray. I'm a married man now. Prophet Isaiah opened his eyes, fixing Kalu with a piercing gaze. This darkness was born of betrayal and envy. You must seek reconciliation or the darkness will remain. Unsatisfied, Kalu moved on. He visited a herbalist in the rural outskirts of Ogun State, hoping for a potion or talisman. The herbalist, an elderly woman with penetrating eyes, sat him down in her cramped hut. Bundles of dried leaves and animal horns hung from the roof. After hearing his story, she simply shook her head. Spiritual secrets have no herbal cure. What you seek is beyond my realm. Seek truth in your past. Each time, Kalu left with more questions than answers. His nights grew restless, punctuated by nightmares of shadowy figures whispering his name. Meanwhile, Zara observed his mounting paranoia, each day more convinced that something supernatural was at play. She prayed fervently but asked few questions, giving him space to reveal whatever plagued him. Yet Kalu kept his darkness guarded, desperate to maintain the image of a devout husband. He had no idea that Zara already sensed far more than he realized, and that her own spiritual gifts would soon force the truth into the open. One evening, his mind racing, Kalu decided to seek out the one person who might grant him absolution, Ebra. Perhaps her forgiveness would break this terrifying cycle. But when he drove to her modest apartment, the windows were dark, the door locked, and a notice on the front read, "Property under new tenancy." He asked neighbors, old acquaintances, nobody knew where Ebra had gone. She had packed up all her belongings and simply vanished. Even her phone number was disconnected. It was as if she had never existed. Growing more frantic, Kalu searched her social media, only to find her accounts gone or inactive. There was no trace of her presence in the city that had once been her home. As he stood in the silent hallway outside her former apartment, a heavy dread settled in his chest. Could something terrible have happened to her? He wondered. He returned home, lost in thought, to find Zara sitting in the living room with a Bible in her lap. Her expression was calm yet knowing. Looking for something? She asked gently. Kalu hesitated, keys still in hand. I needed to clear my head. Zara gazed at him for a moment, her eyes reflecting a quiet understanding. Is it about your past? His heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? She closed the Bible and stood. I feel it, Kalu. There's an unresolved heaviness around you, and it's not just stress. I've prayed about it, but I think you need to find the root cause and make it right. Shaken, he brushed past her, mumbling something incoherent as he headed to the bedroom. Zara watched him go, her suspicions deepening. She wanted to help, but how could she save him from secrets he refused to reveal? Kalu's desperation pushed him to test if the so-called curse was still active. After all, he reasoned, he hadn't collapsed in weeks. Maybe his condition was gone. Late one night, he decided to give a woman named Ifeoma a ride from a popular lounge. Ifeoma was captivating, tall, poised, with a seductive gaze. They talked lightly during the drive. She mentioned an upcoming modeling assignment. He pretended to be intrigued. When she hinted she was free for the night, Kalu felt the old thrill surge within him. He pulled up to a boutique hotel on the outskirts of Lekki. Let's see if we can talk inside, he said with a confident smirk. The moment they stepped into the dimly lit room, Ifeoma turned to him, her sultry smile flickering like a distant flame. For a fleeting instant, Kalu recalled the collapses, his heart thundered with both dread and excitement. Was he really cured? He removed his blazer and placed it on a chair. As Ifeoma drew nearer, her demeanor shifted. The flirtatious aura gave way to something unsettling, ancient, and cold. She rested her hands on his shoulders, her nails pressing lightly against his skin. Kalu's stomach twisted. Are you okay? He asked, a shaky laugh escaping his throat. Ifeoma's eyes glowed with a predatory gleam. I'm fine, darling, she purred. Then she slipped out of his grasp and began to circle him like a predator sizing up its prey. An invisible weight pressed down on Kalu. A voice in his head screamed to leave, but he felt compelled to stay. Outside, the night was eerily silent. The stage was set for an encounter that would burn itself into his memory forever. In the soft glow of the bedside lamp, Ifeoma began to transform. Kalu blinked, thinking his mind was playing tricks on him, but the nightmare refused to fade. Her body seemed to ripple, contorting in unnatural ways. Her eyes narrowed, pupils elongated like a reptile's. Fear paralyzed him. What am I seeing? Suddenly, she hissed, a chilling sound that sliced through the silence. Her smooth skin took on a scaly sheen, and before his very eyes, Ifeoma shed her human guise, revealing an enormous serpent coiled on the carpet. It flicked a forked tongue, eyes locked onto Kalu. He tried to scream, but no sound emerged. His legs gave out, sending him crashing to the floor. Terror pulsated through his veins, rendering him helpless. It was as though every muscle in his body refused to obey him. The snake lunged forward, jaws parting. Kalu squeezed his eyes shut, certain his life was about to end. But a deafening bang from the door startled them both, halting the creature mid-strike. The door burst open, and in rushed Zara. Her face glowed with a fierce determination. Holding a small vial of anointing oil in one hand, she shouted, "In the name of God, release him." The serpent recoiled, letting out an agitated hiss. Zara swiftly knelt beside Kalu, placed a trembling hand on his forehead, and began to pray in a voice both urgent and powerful. For an instant, the serpent reared back, caught between rage and caution. Then, as if repelled by an unseen force, it slithered into the shadows, vanishing under the bed. Moments later, it was gone, no trace left in the room. Kalu lay there, his shirt soaked in cold sweat, eyes wild with panic. Zara held him close, her own breath ragged. Whatever illusions or excuses Kalu had once clung to were shattered. Something far more sinister than human deception was at play, and Zara had just torn open a gateway to that dark, hidden truth. "Kalu, are you hurt?" Zara's voice trembled as she helped him sit up on the floor. His heart still pounded as if it wanted to break through his ribs. He tried to speak, but words failed him. Instead, he could only shake his head, tears threatening to spill from his eyes. "Stay here," she instructed. She swung open the closet door, checking the cramped space, then dropped to her knees, peeking under the bed. There was no sign of Ifeoma, or the monstrous serpent that replaced her. Zara's eyes darted around the room, ensuring the immediate danger was gone. Still shaken, Kalu managed a broken whisper. "How did you find me?" Zara looked at him with a mix of concern and resolve. "I suspected you might try something like this. I followed your car, prayed the entire drive. And when I heard your screams..." Kalu lowered his head, consumed by shame. I don't deserve you." Zara's expression softened. She moved closer, placing a hand on his cheek. "We have bigger issues right now. A demonic force is following you, or maybe it's you who's drawn it in. And if that's the case, I can't battle it alone." A wave of guilt coursed through him. So many lies, so many betrayals, each one culminating in this horrifying event. He stared at his trembling hands and finally asked the question he'd been avoiding. "What do we do?" Zara took a deep breath. "First, you tell me everything. Every betrayal, every sin you've buried. I have a gift of sight, Kalu. I see visions, glimpses of darkness. But if you want real deliverance, you have to confess, both to me and to the people you've wronged." Kalu closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his transgressions crushing him. He realized there was no way out but through. And so, in that dingy hotel room that still reeked of fear, he began to unravel the tapestry of his past, a confession that would redefine everything he thought he knew. They returned home, and in the quiet stillness of their living room, Kalu poured out his darkest secrets. He spoke of the countless women he had used and discarded. He admitted to using Ebra's finances without any intention of paying her back. He recalled every lie, every manipulation that had led to material gains and personal gratification. But the revelation Zara pressed him on was one he tried hardest to forget: Daimeji Adedala, once his best friend. Zara asked, "What did you do to Daimeji?" Kalu's face went pale. He sank into a chair, head in his hands. Daimeji was the first major business partner I had. We built the foundation of my tech company together. But I slept with his fiancée out of envy. I couldn't stand that he had her, and I wanted to prove I could get anything I wanted. Zara's voice dropped to a near whisper. What happened after that? Kalu looked away, unable to meet her eyes. She left him. Daimeji tried to confront me. I cut him out of the company. The stress ruined him. He vanished, Zara. I haven't seen or heard from him since. Tears lined Zara's eyes. How could you betray your best friend like that? And so many others too. Don't you see the pattern? He swallowed hard, tears of shame tracing down his cheeks. I know. I think Daimeji cursed me before he disappeared. The words came out in a shaky breath, heavy with resignation. Zara stood, pacing the length of the living room. That would explain the demonic attacks, the collapses, the serpents. Spiritual curses feed on guilt and wrongdoing. You let your arrogance open door after door to darkness. In that moment, Kalu felt smaller than he had in his entire life. He realized that it was not simply about making amends, it was about undoing the web of harm he'd spun. And the first step was confronting the ghost of Daimeji. Kalu burned through contacts, calling old friends and business associates, determined to find Daimeji. He learned that Daimeji had moved to another state, some said Delta, others said Bainway. No one had concrete information. But slowly, clues emerged that he might be living in a small town near Asaba. Without hesitation, Kalu got into his car, Zara by his side, and embarked on the road trip that would decide his fate. It took days of searching, visiting local bars, and asking wary neighbors. Finally, they found a small electronics shop with a sign reading Adedala Tech Repairs. Inside, behind a counter cluttered with half-fixed phones and laptops, stood Daimeji. He looked thinner, older, but there was no mistaking the man who had once been Kalu's closest friend. Their eyes locked. For a tense moment, neither spoke. Daimeji's gaze flickered with recognition, then hardened with anger. He cleared his throat. What are you doing here, Kalu? Kalu's chest tightened. I came to apologize. Daimeji scoffed. Apologize? After all these years? His voice quivered with suppressed rage and heartbreak. You ruined me, Kalu. I lost my fiancé, my stake in our company, my sense of self. You took everything. Zara stepped forward tentatively. Please hear him out, she said softly. He's here to make things right. Daimeji glared but nodded once, an unspoken permission to proceed. Kalu bared his soul, recounting his regrets, his nightmares, and the horrifying events that led him to realize the full weight of his sins. He asked for forgiveness, not just because he wanted to lift the curse, but because he was truly repentant. For a long time, Daimeji simply stared at him in silence. Then he spoke, voice thick with emotion. You want forgiveness, but I'm not God. You expect a few words to heal years of betrayal? Kalu closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I needed to tell you I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Daimeji pressed trembling hands against the counter. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. But at least you're here. That's more than I ever expected. He hesitated. There is something you need to know about me too. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. Kalu braced himself, ready for whatever revelation would come next, whether it shattered him or led him to redemption. Daimeji took a deep breath, folding his arms as though steeling himself. After you destroyed my life, I cursed you in my pain, he confessed. I prayed that you'd never find peace, that every woman you betrayed would be an echo haunting you. I never imagined it would manifest so, literally. Zara's face clouded. Your anger opened a door to dark forces, Daimeji. But Kalu's actions paved the way for them to enter. Kalu felt a jolt of remorse. He realized both men's souls were entangled in a spiritual struggle. Summoning his courage, he dropped to his knees. Please, Daimeji, I beg you. Lift the curse. I've changed. I'm ready to make amends. Daimeji breathed heavily, an internal battle raging in his eyes. How do I know this isn't just another manipulation? I'll prove it, Kalu answered resolutely. Financially, spiritually, emotionally, anything you ask, I'll do. I owe you that much. Silence stretched between them, laden with years of hurt. Finally, Daimeji exhaled, tears gathering at the edges of his eyes. I never wanted this. I just wanted justice, or maybe just an apology. If you truly mean it, then I release you from the curse, Kalu. May God heal us both. A wave of relief and guilt swept over Kalu. He sobbed openly, burying his face in his hands. Zara placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, tears glistening in her own eyes. Daimeji's words felt like a dam breaking, unleashing a flood of raw emotions neither man had dared acknowledge for years. It's a start, Daimeji said quietly. I can't erase the past, and I don't know if we'll ever be friends again. But I won't keep you bound to this darkness anymore. In that moment, an almost tangible shift seemed to occur. It was as though a heavy weight lifted from the air around them. The journey toward redemption would be grueling, but at least now, the door to healing stood open. Years later, Kalu stood at the bustling Murtala Muhammad International Airport, waiting for a flight to a tech conference abroad. His posture had changed, he carried himself with quiet humility rather than boastful pride. His wedding ring still adorned his finger, reflecting the overhead lights. Life with Zara had not been easy, there were countless counseling sessions, church interventions, and personal reckonings. But they had come through, forging a bond built on honesty rather than performance. He found himself scanning the crowd, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. There, amid travelers hurrying to their gates, stood Ebra. She was radiant, wearing a tailored suit and talking animatedly with a man who held her hand. A wedding band on her finger glimmered under the fluorescent lights. His breath caught. Ebra. The woman he had once cast aside so cruelly was now a vision of success and happiness. Gathering courage, he approached hesitantly. When she saw him, her eyes widened in recognition but held no malice. Kalu, she said, smiling politely. It's been a while. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. Too long. Ebra, he glanced at her husband, who gave a courteous nod. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. Ebra studied him for a moment, then let out a gentle sigh. I forgave you a long time ago. Holding on to bitterness only hurts yourself. My life has moved on, and I'm in a good place. Relief washed over Kalu. He introduced himself to her husband, exchanging pleasantries. As they parted ways to catch different flights, Kalu felt a profound sense of closure. Ebra was free, and so was he. When he boarded his plane, Zara was already seated by the window, waiting for him. She glanced up from her book, smiling warmly. He took her hand, intertwined their fingers, and pressed a light kiss to her knuckles. For the first time in his life, Kalu felt genuine peace, a calm that didn't rely on manipulating others but on sincere transformation. Looking out the window as the plane taxied down the runway, he silently gave thanks. The road to redemption had been littered with dark secrets, curses, and near-fatal encounters. But each step had led him here, to a place where he finally understood what it meant to love without agenda, to strive for goodness instead of self-gratification, and to walk in truth rather than illusions. The end.